and Faith Perlow have a story on standardized tests for this week's education report. I will return with Katie Weaver for a story on housing in Mumbai, India. And finally, John Russell reports on how methane gas could be a sign of alien life. But first, here is Brian Lynn.
Scientists from the American Space Agency, NASA, say they have found evidence of large ice volcanoes on the dwarf planet Pluto. The finding is based on images and data collected by NASA's New Horizons spacecraft. Researchers report in a new study that they identified numerous round-shaped formations on Pluto's surface. The formations suggest the presence of geological activity linked to ice volcanoes, also called cryovolcanoes. The scientists said it is the first time these kinds of structures have been observed in our solar system. Some measured at least 7 kilometers tall and 100 kilometers wide. The particular structures we studied are unique to Pluto, at least so far. Planetary scientist Kelsey Singer said in a statement. She is a member of the New Horizons team, based at the Southwest Research Institute in Boulder, Colorado. She was the lead writer of the study, which recently appeared in Nature Communications. Singer said it is difficult to know exactly when the ice volcanoes formed, but the team believes the volcanoes could be as young as a few 100 million years, or even younger. It is possible that these processes are going on even in the present day, Singer added. Like Earth and our solar system's other planets, Pluto formed about 4.5 billion years ago. It is smaller than Earth's moon and orbits about 5.8 billion kilometers from the Sun. That distance is about 40 times farther than Earth's orbit. Pluto's surface includes flat land, mountains, craters, and valleys. The researchers studied an area southwest of Sputnik Planitia, a large heart-shaped area filled with nitrogen ice. One of the tallest structures, called Wright Mons, may have formed when several volcanic formations came together, the team said. Wright Mons is similar in size to Hawaii's large Mauna Loa volcano, although it is shaped differently. The researchers said Pluto is geologically active. There is evidence of flowing nitrogen ice glaciers. In addition, the dwarf planet has areas where nitrogen ice vaporizes during the day and turns back into ice at night. Lene Quick is a planetary scientist who specializes in ice volcanoes at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland. She said the findings were extremely significant. Quick told the French press agency AFP that scientists believed Pluto should have lost much of its inside heat a long time ago. The new research, however, suggests it was able to hold on to enough energy to facilitate widespread geological activity rather late in its history, she said. Quick added that the findings may help scientists re-examine the possibility that similar volcanic activity might have happened on other small, icy worlds far away from the sun. I'm Ryan Lynn.
And now, words and their stories from VOA Learning English. On this program, we explore words and expressions in the English language. The natural world gives us many of our expressions, from weather to animals to plant life. Today, we talk about a kind of flower. Daisies are big, bright, happy-looking flowers. They stand upright on strong stems. So, if we describe someone as being fresh as a daisy, we mean they seem well-rested and full of energy. We often say we are fresh as a daisy after resting or getting cleaned up. Here is an example. After an all-day hike, I was very tired. But after a shower and short rest, I felt fresh as a daisy and ready for the next activity. Looking fresh as a daisy can also describe a place or room that is clean and orderly. For example, after the man cleaned and painted his kitchen, it looked fresh as a daisy. When a child is learning to walk, they often fall. To encourage them to stand up and try again, we might say, "Upsy daisy." We also might say "upsy daisy" when we lift a child up. It just sounds cute. Upsy daisy. Speaking of children, a popular activity with some is to connect flowers together, like a chain, and wear them. Because of their strong stems, daisies are commonly used to make daisy chains. A daisy chain can mean any connected events, experiences, happenings, or things. A daisy chain is also used to describe electrical signals that are connected in a system. Sometimes this can be used as a verb. When the internet went down, I had to daisy chain my phone to a friend's computer to share some videos. There is also a strange way we use the flower daisy. If someone is pushing up daisies, they are unfortunately dead and buried. This comes from the fact that wildflowers often grow on top of graves. We may use daisies for this expression because they grow easily and wildly in nature. It is important to know that we often use this expression informally. Sometimes we use it as a joke. For example, I'll be pushing up daisies before a time travel machine is invented. And that's all the time we have for this Words and Their Stories. Until next time, I'm Anna Mateo.
Jó estét kívánok! Én az önök GPS-e vagyok a továbbiakban. Szívesen állok rendelkezésre, amennyiben japán partnerüket valakinek meg kell állni. Végül minden nőt un valaki, ahogy szokták ott mondani, és ezügyben rendelkezésre állunk bármit. Kevésbé vagyok jó, de abban is segítek némelyikon, hogyha útvonalat szeretnének választani, de abban azért ritkábbak hozzám, ha szabad kérnem. Egyet nem bírok, bocsánat, kettőt nem bírok, összesen. A kompon hányok, ha lehetséges, akkor arra nem menjünk, vagy arra választunk. Másik hangot, illetve azt gyűlölöm, arról kifejezetten rémült vagyok, hogyha elmegy a GPS vétel. Kérem, biztosítsa folyamatosan a GPS vétel. Egyebekben pedig jó vezetést kívánok, és jó hangulatot, és japán. Szép sebesség, gratulálok. Én meg ugye álmomban szeretnék meghalni, mint a nagyapám, és nem
universities decided to give students the choice to send their scores. That is because testing centers closed in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Many schools say they will continue the policy for at least a while. A group that opposes testing, called Fair Test, noted last autumn that over 1,800 colleges and universities were test optional this year. Even before the pandemic, the University of Chicago made test scores optional. In fact, both the University of California and California State University, Cal State, took it one step further. They removed the test requirement. The two university groups manage over 30 colleges and universities in California and teach about 700,000 students each year. In announcing the decision in March, the top Cal State leader, Steve Relier, known as the Chancellor, said the move will level the playing field and permit more students to get a high-quality degree. Bob Schaefer is the leader of Fair Test. He said many universities in the U.S. will soon follow California's lead. He called the movement to eliminate tests no accident.
However, MIT, one of the highest-rated schools in the U.S., is going against this movement. Stu Schmill is MIT's head of admissions. In a message on the school's website, Schmill said the SAT and ACT give the school a way to judge whether students are ready for MIT. In addition, he noted the tests help MIT find students who are able to succeed but may have come from high schools that are not able to teach advanced coursework. In a conversation with MIT's news service, Schmill said test scores, especially in math, permit the school to predict a student's performance. He did say, however, that MIT is not looking for students with perfect scores, but the scores are an important extra piece of information. Critics of standardized tests say wealthy students have an advantage and do better than poor students. Wealthy schools often have advisors who help students learn the tests. Both the California universities noted this criticism as a reason to eliminate the tests.
Nagyon ügyes vagy, és én sem vagyok hülye, mert ide értünk, ahova beállítottuk, és sikeresek vagyunk, és meg tudtuk csinálni.
To see that a student is prepared for college, even if they have not taken.
Kellemes napot kívánok mindenkinek, én az önök műsorvezetője vagyok, nem egyszerűen egy GPS hang, hanem kifejezetten egy entertainer. Ez egy idegen nyelven azt jelenti, hogy szórakoztató. Én szórakoztató igyekszem lenni, nem úgy, mint esetleg mások, úgyhogy kérem, a jövőben is főleg engem válasszanak rá százalékokban. Jó utat kívánok, jó vezetést, és kevés eltámosodó.
Lesson said, MIT decision will not affect most students who will
Köszönöm. Ez a számomra olyan, mint a legbesesebb így, és hát az is tulajdonképpen, nyilván százalékon van ezekből a dolgok. Tehát jó utat, jó szurkolást kívánok, és mindenképpen balesetmentes közlekedést 2 feltétellel. 1, nem megyünk kompra, mert azon hányok. Másrészt viszont a GPS vétel sosem szűnik meg, mert akkor elbizonytalanodom, és borzasztó dolgokat fogok mondani. Még egyszer tehát, jó vezetést kívánok önnek, és balesetmentes közlekedést, hát amennyire lehet.
It helps a college or university understand just how strong an A might be in a situation where almost everyone in the applicant pool has A's.
Blessing also noted that students who are thinking about going to MIT will also send in other scores. American students will send in advanced placement test scores, and international students will send in scores from their own countries. For a student from Great Britain, for example, MIT will look at scores from A-level exams and IGCSE tests in different subjects. Schmill said the test is a tool, and the school will make changes if better tools become available. I'm Dan Friedel.
And I'm Faith Perlow.
Childhood dream is about to become reality. The 40-year-old Indian man lives in a 15 square meter, one-room home in India's financial capital, Mumbai. It would not be too small if he lived alone. But Kambli's parents, brother, and his brother's wife all live there too. Kambli represents the 3rd generation of his family to live in the small, crowded home contained in an old building in much disrepair. He said he always dreamed of living in a modern building. Whenever I went out, I wanted to own a house, however tiny, in one of these buildings, Kambli recalls. I even told my uncle that one day I will live in such a place.
Thousands of other Indian families live in similar spaces in an area of Mumbai called BDD Chals. The 37-hectare area is dense with people and with tenements that were built about 100 years ago. Real estate in the area, however, is among the costliest in the world. All around the BDD Chals, business and residential development has expanded quickly in recent years. Mumbai is home to more than 20 million people. Now, Kambli and others dreaming of new, better homes have a chance to see that dream come true. Under a massive $2 billion redevelopment project, the 16,000 tenements, like the one Kambli lives in, will be destroyed and replaced with modern high-rise buildings. The project is part of major plans that Mumbai has long sought with limited success to clear costly land of old, damaged buildings and replace them with tall buildings that include homes, offices, and large market centers. Some city planners, however, have raised concerns about the project and the pressure it could add to the city's weak infrastructure.
Britain built the BDD Chals during its colonial rule of India. It needed the rooms to house migrant cotton mill workers. Inside most homes, a large cloth piece separates the counter at one end that serves as a kitchen from the rest of the space that serves as both a bedroom and a living room. Televisions are put over the bed or in a corner. 2 bathrooms serve 20 rooms. The occupants pay the government a small amount every month for the homes. Older people often spend their day in a long passageway that leads to the rooms or just outside on the grounds. They hang their wash to dry or look after children when their parents go to work. There is a sense of community in the tenements, some residents say. Lately, some residents have been visiting a model home in a nearby building to get an idea of what the future may look like for them. I don't know when my turn will come. It may still take years, said 55-year-old Bhagwan Sawant. He pointed to the kitchen and other parts of the model home. It will be great to have a modern home, he said. The new complexes will also have a hospital, schools, and activity centers for sports. The work has started on the first building, and it will be ready in 3 years, said Prashant Datrak, the top engineer of the project.
It took more than 20 years to launch the project after it was first proposed. Some experts are warning that the huge project is moving too fast. Redevelopment is necessary, but rebuilding has to be done in a sustainable and environmentally friendly manner, said Sulakshana Mahajan. She was a member of the former Mumbai Transformation Support Unit, a state government policy group set up in 2005. It was involved in earlier proposals for the redevelopment of the tenements and shut down in 2019. She said the early plans did not aim to increase density, but to better house the existing residents. That is no longer the case, she said. Open spaces available per person will be drastically shrunk, and distance between buildings is too little, Mahajan said. She argued that the project could create too much demand on city services, such as water supply, waste removal, and transportation. In the BDD Chals, most residents are more happy about the project than they are worried about it. There is a growing sense, however, that the redevelopment will end the communal way of life they have now. Here, I never have to worry about my mother. All of us work, but know that someone will look after her if she is unwell, said Campbell. But when they close the door of their new home, he added, no one will know what is happening inside. I'm Katie Weaver.
And I'm Dan Novak.
Én nem vagyok benne biztos, hogy ilyen rohadt gyorsan kéne menni.
Researchers recently said methane may be the first detectable sign of life outside of our planet. But the gas would only suggest the presence of life if discovered in the atmosphere of a rocky planet orbiting in the habitable zone. This area is neither too hot nor too cold for liquid water to exist. Scientists are working to understand the signs of life, known as biosignatures, that might be present in observations of planets in other solar systems. The researchers, in a study published in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, showed that atmospheric methane in the correct amount could be a sign of life if other conditions are met. Methane is an important trace gas in Earth's atmosphere, at less than 2 parts per million by volume. Unlike other possible biosignatures, such as atmospheric oxygen, methane is one of the few gases that could be detected by using the James Webb Space Telescope. The telescope was launched by NASA in December and is due to become operational within months. Study lead author Maggie Thompson, a graduate student at the University of California, Santa Cruz, said on Earth, the majority of methane is produced by life. Most of the methane is created directly by life. Methane-producing microbes in wetlands, rice fields, or in the digestive system of large animals. Methane is also produced through human activities, such as burning fossil fuels including coal and oil, which are the remains of dead organisms. The researchers made a 3-part case for methane as a possible biosignature. First, it would be unsurprising for life elsewhere to produce methane, study co-writer Joshua Christensen Totten said. Secondly, methane would not last for long in atmospheres of habitable rocky planets without constant replenishment, possibly by living organisms, the researchers said. Thirdly, they added, it would be difficult for other processes, such as chemical reactions, to maintain replenishment without leaving behind some kind of evidence. This evidence would suggest the methane was not biologically produced. Gas-spewing volcanoes, for instance, would release carbon monoxide alongside methane. But biological activity generally reduces carbon monoxide's atmospheric concentrations. Thus, the researchers explained, non-biological processes cannot easily produce rocky planet atmospheres rich in both methane and carbon dioxide, as on Earth, but with little or no carbon monoxide. Scientists are expecting greater insight into exoplanet atmospheres using Webb and other new telescopes. Oxygen, more plentiful in Earth's atmosphere than methane, is another possible biosignature. It is fed into Earth's atmosphere by biological processes, in this case photosynthesis by plants and microbes. But oxygen could be difficult for Webb to detect. Christensen explained that it's important to note that the diversity of planetary environments elsewhere is probably very large. He added, there could be other methane-making processes that no one has yet considered. I'm John Russell.
And that's our program for today. Listen again tomorrow to learn English through stories from around the world. I'm Dan Novak.
Welcome to Learning English, a daily 30-minute program from the Voice of America. I'm Jonathan Evans.
And I'm Ashley Thompson. This program is aimed at English learners, so we speak a little slower and we use words and phrases, especially written.
Én nem vagyok benne biztos, hogy ilyen rohadt gyorsan kéne menni.
Today on the program, you will hear from John Russell, Jill Robbins, and Brian Lynn. Later, Steve Ember will present our American History series, The Making of a Nation. But first, here is John Russell.
With bright lights on the floor and walls, loud electronic music, and a red shuttlecock flying around, This Malaysian badminton court seems like the set of a science fiction movie. Shuttle in the Dark is a place to play badminton in the famous Petronas Twin Towers in Kuala Lumpur. It was set up in late 2021 by a company that wanted people to take up the sport after 2 years of restrictions related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Badminton is one of the most popular sports in Malaysia and Asia. The Southeast Asian country has produced some of the world's top-ranked players. Irina Inozametseva is director of Inexport Management. She said the goal was to gain back the interest of people to come back and play. She added that the group wanted to draw in not only expert players, but also new people who were not able to or never played badminton before. The futuristic court presents a new difficulty for players. They have to adjust their eyes to the darkness to play, said Li Yan Sheng, a professional badminton coach. Professional player Ho Yan Mei used the term focus, meaning to carefully direct attention to describe the requirements of playing on the court. With the lighting, somehow we are still able to hit it, and then it requires better focus. And it's exciting. It's different, but it's still like playing normal badminton, she said. Open to players of all levels, Shuttle in the Dark charges $42.63 per hour to use the courts and rent their equipment. A regular public court charges about $4.50. I'm John Russell.
Én nem vagyok benne biztos, hogy ilyen rohadt gyorsan kéne menni. Vigyázz, vigyázz, második ilyen.
They began with funny videos and talked over Mario Kart racing games on their YouTube channel. Now, 2 Ukrainian brothers who live in Japan have added a more serious subject to their videos. They are telling young Japanese about the news from their country and bringing the realities of war closer to Japan. Just before the Russian invasion of Ukraine began, Sava Tkakov, 26, and his younger brother, Jan, 20, celebrated the 2nd anniversary of opening their YouTube broadcast. Now, over 2 million people follow their Sawayan channel and the Sawayan Games channel that Sava hosts. The first word of war came from their father. He is a business person and had returned to Kyiv 2 months ago. After Russian troops arrived, he stayed to help defend his country. The brothers' YouTube content, which used to be full of tricks, jokes, and action videos, has become more serious. They worry about their 53-year-old father and friends in Ukraine. In early March, the brothers said that they planned to volunteer as defenders too. It started a wave of reactions, some supporting and others criticizing them. The father said they should not come. The Kachos have no military training and soon changed their minds. Sava said he received long and serious messages from some of his teenage fans showing they wanted to follow the brothers to Ukraine. By sending out messages through our channel, I made kids want to go to war, and I cannot say if it was good or bad, Sava said at the news conference Thursday. But at least it was meaningful that they became interested in the issue. Sava, who uses the social media name No War, used his gaming channel to raise money. He collected some 3.6 million yen, or $29,500, in 3 hours, and donated all of it to the Ukrainian embassy. Jan and Sava said they also started receiving messages from parents saying their children started thinking about peace. Others thanked them for raising important social issues. I believe the merit of YouTube is I can convey the real information from the ground that my father is sharing with us about the situation that is very up to date. He puts it on the internet almost immediately, Sava said. Japan was quick to join other industrialized nations in placing restrictions on trade with Russia and providing support for Ukraine. Tokyo has also sent some military equipment, but not weapons and medical supplies to Ukraine. It is an exception to Japan's ban on sending military equipment to countries in conflict. Japan's government is worried about the effect of Moscow's war on East Asia. Tokyo has faced recent threats from North Korea and China. Due to sanctions, Russia stopped peace treaty talks with Japan over the disputed Kuril Islands. Moscow has held the island chain north of Japan since 1945. Sava Takochov arrived with his family in Japan when he was 4 and studied at a top Japanese university. He thanked his adopted country for its support, but said Tokyo should keep its peaceful role in the fight. Japan is the world's top-class peaceful nation, and what the country is doing right now is very appropriate, he said. As to the question of whether Japan should send weapons, I do not think it's the kind of role Japan should be playing. Instead, he said, Japan can better help by continuing to appeal for peace and take a leadership role within Asia. He also said Japan can provide home to many Ukrainian refugees. Some may find the language difficult or the food unusual, but I'm sure they can overcome the difficulties with the empathy of the Japanese people and the spirits of the Ukrainians. I'm Jill Robbins.
The American Space Agency, NASA, is carrying out final testing on its new rocket that aims to help return humans to the moon. NASA says its Space Launch System, or SLS, is the most powerful rocket ever built. U.S. officials have said the rocket was designed to begin a new generation of human space exploration. SLS is the first rocket designed to carry both astronauts and supplies on a single mission. It is part of NASA's Artemis program, which aims to land the first woman and first person of color on the moon. Artemis has a goal to land American astronauts on the moon no earlier than 2025. Last year, NASA pushed back the planned launch. It would be the first moon landing by astronauts since NASA's Apollo 17 mission in 1972. NASA is calling the first launch of the SLS rocket Artemis 1. There will be no crew on the spacecraft during the first mission. SLS will carry NASA's Orion spacecraft on a test mission to fly around the moon. NASA announced last year that it had chosen American company SpaceX as its partner to land the next astronauts on the moon. SpaceX has already completed several missions to carry astronauts to the International Space Station. SpaceX uses the Falcon 9 rocket and Crew Dragon spacecraft. SpaceX also is developing and testing a human landing system, HLS, designed to put humans on the moon. NASA's plan for the future calls for its SLS rocket to transport astronauts on the Orion spacecraft to lunar orbit. From there, astronauts would transfer to SpaceX's HLS to be transported to the surface of the moon. SpaceX has also developed a super heavy space vehicle called Starship. Company chief Elon Musk has said Starship is designed to transport astronauts to the moon as well as possibly Mars. Unlike the SLS rocket, Starship is designed to be reusable. SpaceX plans to carry out a test flight to launch Starship into orbit sometime this year. In addition to Starship, NASA announced earlier this month that it is seeking additional proposals from American companies to develop moon landers. The landers are to transport astronauts between lunar orbit and the moon's surface. NASA said landers should have the ability to link up with a future lunar orbiting space station it plans to create called Gateway. In preparation for its upcoming flight, SLS was recently transported to a launch structure in Cape Canaveral, Florida, for final testing operations. One of the next major tests for the system is called a wet dress rehearsal. This preparation will involve engineers fully loading the rocket's main fuel tanks with liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. Then a simulated launch countdown will take place. The countdown will stop seconds before the rocket's 4 RS-25 engines start. All other systems are to be fully examined and tested in the coming weeks. Information from the tests will help decide when the rocket will be launched. During the test mission, Orion will aim to travel 450,600 kilometers from Earth and thousands of kilometers beyond the moon. NASA said this will be farther than any spacecraft built for humans has ever traveled. The mission is expected to last 4 to 6 weeks. I'm Brian Lynn.
Welcome to the Making of a Nation, American History in VOA Special English. I'm Steve Ember. On a cold October day in 1957, the Soviet Union launched a small satellite into orbit around the Earth. Radio Moscow made the announcement.
The first artificial Earth satellite in the world has now been created. This first satellite was today successfully launched in the USSR.
The world's first satellite was called Sputnik 1. Sputnik was an important propaganda victory for the Soviets in the Cold War with the United States. Many people believed the nation that controlled space could win any war, and the Soviet Union had reached outer space first. The technology that launched Sputnik probably began in the late 19th century. A Russian teacher at that time, Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, decided that a rocket engine could provide power for a space vehicle. In the early 1900s, another teacher, American Robert Goddard, tested the idea. He experimented with small rockets to see how high and how far they could travel. In 1923, a Romanian student in Germany, Hermann Obert, showed how a spaceship might be built and launched to other planets. Rocket technology improved during World War II. It was used to produce flying bombs. Thousands of people in Britain and Belgium died as a result of V-1 and V-2 rocket attacks. The rockets were launched from Germany. The larger V-2 rocket had the ability to hit the United States. After the war, it became clear that the United States and the Soviet Union, allies in wartime, would become enemies in peacetime. So both countries employed German scientists to help them win the race to space. The Soviets took the first step by creating Sputnik. This satellite was about the size of a basketball. It got its power from a rocket. It orbited Earth for 3 months. Within weeks, the Soviets launched another satellite into Earth orbit, Sputnik 2. It was much bigger and heavier than Sputnik 1. It also carried a passenger, a dog named Laika. The United States joined the space race about 3 months later. It launched a satellite from Cape Canaveral in the southeastern state of Florida. The satellite was called Explorer 1. It weighed about 14 kilograms. Explorer 1 went into a higher orbit than either Sputnik, and its instruments made an important discovery. They found an area of radiation about 960 kilometers above Earth. The next major space victory belonged to the Soviets. They sent the first man into space. In April 1961, cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin was launched in the vehicle known as Vostok. He remained in space for less than 2 hours. He landed safely by parachute near a village in Russia. Less than a month later, the United States sent its first astronaut into space. He was Alan Shepard. Shepard remained in space only about 15 minutes. He did not go into Earth orbit. That flight came in February 1962 with John Glenn. By 1965, the United States and the Soviet Union were experimenting to see if humans could survive outside a spacecraft. In March, Russian cosmonaut Alexei Leonov became the first person to do so. A strong tether connected Leonov to the spacecraft. The tether gave him oxygen to breathe, and it permitted him to float freely at the other end. After about 10 minutes, Leonov had to return to the spacecraft. He said he regretted the decision. He was having such a good time. A little more than 2 months later, an American would walk outside his spacecraft. Astronaut Edward White had a kind of rocket gun. This gave him some control of his movements in space. Like Leonov, White was sorry when he had to return to his spacecraft. Later that year, 1965, the United States tried to have one spacecraft get very close to another spacecraft while in orbit. This was the first step in getting spacecraft to link or dock together. Docking would be necessary to land men on the moon. The plan called for a Gemini spacecraft carrying 2 astronauts to get close to an unmanned satellite. The attempt failed. The target satellite exploded as it separated from its main rocket. America's space agency decided to move forward. It would launch the next in its Gemini series. Then someone had an idea. Why not launch both Geminis? The second one could chase the first one instead of a satellite. Again, things did not go as planned. It took 2 tries to launch the second Gemini. By that time, the first one had been in orbit about 11 days. Time was running out. The astronauts on the second Gemini moved their spacecraft into higher orbits. They got closer and closer to the Gemini ahead of them. They needed to get within 600 meters to be considered successful. After all the problems on the ground, the events in space went smoothly. The 2 spacecraft got within 1/3 of a meter of each other. The astronauts had made the operation seem easy. In January 1959, the Soviets launched a series of unmanned lunar rockets. The third of these flights took pictures of the far side of the moon. This was the side no one on Earth had ever seen. The United States planned to explore the moon with its unmanned Ranger spacecraft. There were a number of failures before Ranger 7 took pictures of the moon. These pictures were made from a distance. The world did not get pictures from the surface of the moon until the Soviet Luna 9 landed there in February 1966. For the next few years, both the United States and the Soviet Union continued their exploration of the moon. Yet the question remained, which one would be the first to put a man there? In December 1968, the United States launched Apollo 8 with 3 astronauts. The flight proved that the spacecraft could orbit the moon and return to Earth safely. The Apollo 9 spacecraft had 2 vehicles. One was the command module. It could orbit the moon, but could not land on it. The other was the lunar module. On a flight to the moon, it would separate from the command module and land on the moon's surface. Apollo 10 astronauts unlinked the lunar module and flew it close to the moon's surface. After those flights, everything was ready.
12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running.
July 16th, 1969, 3 American astronauts lifted off in Apollo 11. On the 20th, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin entered the lunar module called the Eagle. Michael Collins remained in the command module, the Columbia. The two vehicles separated.
25 feet. That's looking good down a half.
It was a dangerous time. The Eagle could crash, or it could fall over after it landed. That meant the astronauts would die on the moon.
Forward, drift into the right level. 30 seconds. Forward.
Millions of people watched on television or listened on the radio. They waited for Armstrong's message.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
The Eagle has landed. Then they waited again. It took the astronauts more than 3 hours to complete the preparations needed to leave the lunar module. Finally, the door opened. Neil Armstrong climbed down first. He put one foot on the moon, then the other foot, and then came his words from so far away.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Man on the moon. Oh, boy.
CBS television newsman Walter Cronkite shared the excitement that he and so many people felt as man first walked on the surface of the moon. Later, Cronkite would remember the historical significance of that moment in 1969.
It was hard, I think, to imagine our emotions at the moment. It really was something that had to grip you. It was as if you could have stood at the dock and waved goodbye to Columbus. You knew darn good and well that this was the real history in the making.
Armstrong walked around. Soon, Aldrin joined him.
Setting up the flying now.
The two men placed an American flag on the surface of the moon. They also collected moon rocks and soil. When it was time to leave, they returned to the Eagle and guided it safely away. They reunited with the Columbia and headed for home. The United States had won the race to the moon.
The thing that made this particularly gripping was that that sense of history, that if this was successful, this was a date that was going to be in all of the history books from time evermore. I think we sensed that at the time, sitting there at the Cape, watching that great beast get on its way, that this was it.
And that's our program for today. Listen again tomorrow to learn English through stories from around the world. I'm Jonathan Evans.
And I'm Ashley Thompson.
Strong, and this is VOA1, the hits.
Welcome to Learning English, a daily 30-minute program from the Voice of America. I'm Jonathan Evans.
And I'm Ashley Thompson. This program is aimed at English learners, so we speak a little slower and we use words and phrases especially written for people learning English.
Today on the program, you will hear from Brian Lynn,
Újra
Dan
tervezek, tudod mekkora meló?
Friedel, and Anna Mateo. Later, Steve Ember will present our American history series, The Making
Újra
of a
tervezek,
Nation.
tudod mekkora meló?
But first, here is Brian Lynn.
Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam announced Monday that she will not seek a new term in office. The decision comes as Lam prepares to end her current 5-year term, during which she faced major anti-government protests and the COVID-19 pandemic. The territory's next leader is expected to be chosen in May. The position is elected by a committee